I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this is one of the most serious Mercedes-AMG vehicles that you can buy while still retaining a nice, smart persona. Unlike so many of AMG's modern vehicles, the E63 S that I've got here still totally characterizes what this sub-brand of Mercedes-Benz was once all about. And that was giving you a nice, powerful, seriously powerful engine under this long bonnet while still retaining an aesthetic which could fly under the radar. And I think that the modern E63 S can still do that, just as its ancestor, the Hammer, did back in the 1980s. Now, of course, vehicle technology has come a long way since the Hammer, and as such, the E63 S is quite a different beast. It has an insanely powerful 450 kilowatt twin turbo petrol V8, which really is internal combustion engines going out with a bang, a Mercedes-AMG. We've also got enormous carbon ceramic stoppers on this car, a $15,900 option. But when you're already spending 250 grand on this car, what's a Kia Picanto's worth of brakes? And as we'll see when we take the E63 S out onto the road, what this 2.1 tonne sedan is capable of at speed is quite uncanny. But in the best of E-Class tradition, it does so with an appearance that doesn't scream for your attention, unlike, say, a C63 in matte grey and yellow stickers. Jumping inside the facelifted E63 S, and this car really does show you, once again, what AMG was once about, and that is creating a seriously sumptuous interior that's not too hard on the eye and certainly not too attention-seeking. Now, don't get me wrong, you can still order traditional interiors in most vehicles that AMG makes, but if you compare and contrast back to the review that we did last week, or it might be a fortnight ago by the time you see this, on the new GLA 45, where the interior is full of yellow trim, you'll see that this is kind of the other school of thought here in the E63. Instead, it's quite conservative, toned down, and instead of carbon fiber trim, real carbon fiber, as AMG put in their cars, we have this gorgeous open pore black wood, vast expanses of it across the cascading center console here, across the dashboard and the doors. It gives the cabin a really warm and textural feel, and I personally love it in an AMG application. I think it's so well suited to this car. Naturally, we do have a few sporty touches. These are the standard seat for the car. They're a mix of Napa leather and real Alcantara, and I think it's appropriate for a vehicle like the E63 S to have a little bit of Alcantara on the seat just to help hold you in, but it really is only a narrow band. The rest of it is plush, perforated Napa leather in black with sort of grey stitching and piping. Sadly, you can't get like a beige or a tan for the car, which I think would be particularly plush as well. Now, here on the steering wheel, we've got a leather wheel, no Alcantara on the wheel, which is the way it should be. Perforated here, just a little flat bottom, mostly round. And this is the new Mercedes-Benz steering wheel. And as you can see, there's quite a lot going on. We've got these two sort of flying spurs here coming out from this quite delicate little airbag cover. We've got Manatino switches here for the drive mode, and then also shortcut keys for whatever you want. You can have exhaust, you can have dampers, you can have stability control. It's totally customizable. So beyond that steering wheel, which I will just say the trackpad system doesn't always work that well, and real buttons would have been preferable to me at least. We then have larger screens than in last year's version of the E-Class. We've now got these twin 12.3-inch screens. They are big and beautiful and super crisp, super bright. The E-Class, unlike a lot of Benzes, does actually get this cover, which kind of casts a bit of a shadow on the screen, but it's not really necessary because the screens are so bright. The graphics are nice too, and we can control the center one with this trackpad or by touch, which is also new for 2021 for the E-Class, whereas the screen in front of the driver is purely driven by this rather finicky trackpad here on the wheel. Now, beyond those systems, we don't have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You've got to plug in your phone for those features, but we do have a stunningly crisp Burmester stereo as standard in this car, along with nice features like seat heating and cooling, which I'm enjoying on this hot summer's day. The practicality of the car is pretty good too. Deep bin here with USB-C ports for fast charging, flip-up console with big cup holders and wireless charging, plus a third USB-C port for the front seats, and then decent door bins, which will take a pretty big bottle as well. And then a large sunroof, which retracts letting you bring a bit of air and light into the cabin. All right, let's check out the back seats. The E63 is quite a large sedan, and that means that the rear seat of this vehicle is perfectly capable of carrying adults. The size down from this car, the C63, is a little bit tighter in the back, but you can get the C-Class in a wagon, which helps on the headroom front. But here in the E-Class, as you can see, it's quite commodious. So for myself at 6 foot, I have another inch of headroom above me, perhaps a little more than that, and that's despite the fact we've got a twin panoramic sunroof in this car. Legroom behind my own driving position is good. Toe room is compromised by the sheer size of the seat, however. Now the center seat is not a place you'd want to sit, even though we do have a seat belt for it. The outboard seats are quite shapely AMG seats with these larger bolsters, so you're not going to want to be sitting here kind of floating between those, and the hump in the floor is quite large. But as a vehicle for taking 4 adults, the E63 is good. We do have air vents back here as well. We've got a separate fan zone and temperature zone back here, and we have seat heating for the outboard seats, plus all the plush leather-lined materials, wood materials continue back here to the back, along with these beautifully decorative Burmester tweeters as well. So you still have a real air of luxury in the rear seat of the E63. Now, given that if you follow my recommendation, you'll only be using this car for 4 people, they can enjoy an armrest here with flockline storage and with retractable cup holders. And lastly, there is a console here with 2 USB-C ports and a 12-volt socket. So you could theoretically actually have about 9 USB ports in this car, which is quite generous. All right, let's jump outside and take a look at boot space. Stepping outside to the back of the E63 S sedan, and that's probably one of my only big packaging problems with the car, is that here in Australia, it is sedan only. In other markets, including in the United States, not typically known as a wagon market, you can get the E63 S as an estate car, which is pretty darn cool if you ask me, a true Mercedes-Benz long roof with a really big engine under the bonnet. But for us here, despite the fact this is already a niche car, Mercedes-Benz Australia has chosen not to offer the station wagon of any E-Class anymore. They've all been deleted, including the all-terrain, which is a little bit sad. Anyway, it's at least quite practical for a 4-door. We've got a power tailgate, which opens up promptly to reveal a 540-litre boot that extends back an awfully long way, meaning you will get quite a few large suitcases in, even if the aperture is nowhere near as good as a station wagon or an SUV like the GLE 63. We do have tabs here to lower the seat backs flat, so that extends the practicality a little bit further, but there aren't any hooks, although there is a netted area off to the side, currently occupied by the vehicle's 5 high visibility vests, as required by EU law. Underneath the boot floor, you'll find not especially much, and that's because this vehicle, which wears 20-inch wheels, but more importantly, absolutely enormous brakes, there's really no way you'd be getting a spare onto this car. So we've got an inflation kit. We've also got the compressor for the vehicle's air suspension system as well, so not a lot of space left over. Now we'll lower that tailgate. We've also got the ability to lock the car right from the boot, but we're going to jump into the driver's seat and see what this 450 kilowatt twin turbo V8 E63 S is like on Australian roads. So what is the updated E63 S like to drive? Well, to me, this vehicle actually carries quite a lot of weight on its shoulders, because unlike newer AMG products like the A45, CLA45, GLA45, the E63 has a lot of heritage behind it. This isn't a new idea for AMG. In fact, it's one of their oldest products in the lineup. Not this particular car, of course, but when AMG was just an independent tuner that didn't just work on Mercedes vehicles, one of the first cars with the 3-pointed star that they did transform was the 500e. And that's basically where this vehicle gets its heritage from. The E-Class has had many generations since then, all of which have had an AMG variant of some kind, and this is simply the most modern and the most extreme of that line, but you can clearly date this car's heritage, and I think that's cool. But what are we dealing with here of the 2021 version? Well, we have AMG's very familiar 4-litre twin turbocharged petrol V8, producing some pretty manic figures. 450 kilowatts, 850 newton meters of torque. So this vehicle is producing a lot of pulling power basically everywhere in the rev range, and as such it's quick. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It is a supercar dressed up as a executive saloon. The cliche would say that it's a elite athlete in a great suit. If you want to go down that path of thinking about it, then go for your life, because that's exactly what it is. From the outside, there's really no identifying the E63 as the beast that it is, and I quite like that. You probably noticed earlier in the video that this particular car is dressed up in quite a subtle specification with high-tech silver over a black interior. 20-inch wheels are big, but I mean, there are 4-cylinder E-classes that have standard 20s. The optional carbon ceramic brakes are a giveaway on this car at $15,900. They're a pricey option. And then of course there's the exterior carbon package on the car, which is $7,500, and I'd leave that off. One thing I like about the interior is there's no carbon in sight, and I don't think you really need it outside either. Point being, this is still a subtle, fast Mercedes-Benz. It also extends to how the E63 drives, which is incredibly precise, incredibly muscular, kind of uncannily agile for such a large and heavy sedan, and yet it's not intimidating. You know, you can get into this car and drive it around on 10% throttle, and I think anybody would be comfortable doing that. Or, you know, you can really open the taps and just see what this vehicle is all about, and on a great country road where you've got space to do so. The E63 is terrifyingly fast at times. There's of course the amount of power that this large engine produces, but there's also the way this chassis can put that power to the ground so effectively. Partially it's down to advances in tyre technology. This car has exceptional Pirelli P0 rubber that's also very wide, 295 wide at the back, staggered tyres, a little bit more narrow on the front axle. And that's because even though AMG have really had to equip this vehicle with all-wheel drive because of just how much power and torque it's now putting out, it's still 100% rear-wheel drive in its default demeanour. And so you do want to have those super wide rear tyres, even though the cost of replacement is eye-watering. The vehicle progressively starts to transfer torque to the front axle depending on the level of slip at the rear wheels. However, there is a drift mode which lets you completely disconnect the front axle from the driveline, and then it will remain 100% rear drive no matter what. But in the sort of Pro and Master chassis modes that you can select through the infotainment system, it's going to remain almost entirely rear-wheel drive. And that's the feeling you get when you're driving this car hard on a great country road, is that you're getting a lot of push from the rear end, not a lot of pull from the front end, and of course that's how things are meant to be. Then there's the E63's beefy but fundamentally accurate steering, which is really just a joy to use. The steering wheel itself feels good in the hand. It's quite a wide rim, but not to the ridiculous extent of BMW's M and M Sport wheels at the moment. It just feels about right for a vehicle of this kind of performance. And even despite the E63 S's considerable mass, you still get really good turning in this car. It wants to change direction quickly, and the agility on offer is really quite impressive in the 2021 E63 S, despite tipping the scales at about 2,094 kilos. So it's not light, and you do have to wonder whether or not there might have been a few more efficiencies made in terms of the mass of this car, because that's a big number, and yet it will really thrill you with what it's capable of doing. Now, some of those skills come from the suspension. We have air suspension on this vehicle, but it's not really there for comfort. It's more there to contain body motion and give this car part of its excellent mechanical grip. There really isn't much body roll in the E63 S, and the way that they've been able to achieve that result is by strictly containing wheel movement and also body roll. But it means that on Australian B roads, which are typically not well finished, the wheels don't have very far to go. Like if we hit this piece here, the bang that you hear through the chassis is the wheel very quickly running out of vertical movement. And if you're driving this car hard on a back road that isn't perfectly smooth, you're going to hear the wheels hitting their bump stops more often than is comfortable. And that's because this car is just fundamentally tuned for smooth roads and racetracks. And so it can occasionally be slightly off-putting on a kind of crappily surfaced Australian back road, where there's just quite a lot of noise and harshness that can come from the suspension. But then, once you hit a bit of freshly poured blacktop, everything starts to make sense and the car's dynamics are absolutely wonderful. Something like an Audi RS6 on that car's air suspension is actually a better fit for Australian back roads and has a higher level of compliance. Same thing for the Alpina B5. However, the AMG E63 is more comfortable and more compliant than a BMW M5, which is pretty damn stiff. This car is better than that, but it doesn't feel particularly well attuned to a bad quality road, which we have a lot of here in Australia. Equally, refinement doesn't love a coarse chip road. It's a pretty loud experience in the cabin because of the sheer amount of road noise from those super wide P0s if you're on coarse chip. On the highway though, it's a quiet cruiser. Naturally though, if what you want is a really quiet and plush E-Class, and the E63 is always going to have some compromises as the performance apex of the range. What you can look at is the Mercedes E53, which is a six-cylinder version, a bit more sort of refined in nature, not as much of an animal. And then underneath that, unfortunately, it's all four cylinders. There's no longer a comfort spec V8. There's not even a comfort spec six-cylinder in the E-Class in Australia anymore, which just feels like a mistake to me. It's four cylinders or it's AMG versions, and that's it. So those are my detailed impressions of the new 2021 Mercedes-AMG E63 S sedan. Now I think this is a really nice facelift and nice update to the E63. The interior is a little more high-tech, even more livable than before, and this car still does exactly what it says on the tin. It provides you with an insanely fast and yet still usable package that's dressed up in an appearance that's a little more subtle than what we've come to expect from Mercedes-AMG. And for me, that really works. It also shows you why a sedan is superior to an SUV when you try and push these sorts of laws of physics, because its body style, low to the ground with a low center of gravity, is just so much better. It also demonstrates really about as far as the internal combustion engine is probably ever going to get with this kind of performance before AMG inevitably switches to electrification over the next decade or two. But I'm keen to know your thoughts on the E63. Is this a dream car? Is it something within reach and you're currently considering? Or would you go for something else like an M5 Competition or M5 CS or an Audi RS6 wagon? Let me know down below in the comments. While you're there, make sure to hit subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.